too much, I think. So rook on f to c8, perhaps. I didn't really consider queen takes d3, knight takes d3, because honestly I think his knight isn't too badly placed on d3. But it's also interesting. Queen takes d3. Queen takes d3, knight takes d3, bishop b2 again. And I'm having trouble breaking through. So let's improve our pieces. There's some reason for the rook f c8. For those of you that are wondering, it's more about like getting my king closer to the center. I think with king f8, than the very small consideration of the weakness of my a pawn after rook a c8. Okay, now I think it's time to trade queens, and this is better for black, but obviously not fatal yet, but it's getting close. Maybe it's almost fatal. Knight d5. He has pawn takes pawn. Knight takes c3. Looks like it wins a pawn. Rook c2, knight a4. Wow. Knight d5, bishop b2, knight c4. I don't really want to trade pawns on d4. It eliminates one of his greatest weaknesses. At the same time, I have to be careful about positioning of my knights. His knight on d3 is really working out pretty well for him. Maybe I can invade with take, rook c3. And when he moves his knight, I can play simply knight c4. But again, I'm not sure that I'm making progress after a4, something like along those lines. Going down to the 7th rank doesn't really do anything. So I'm going to try this knight to d5. But we have to be careful and aware that he is going to have e4 at some point here. He may take on c5 also at some point. Taking on c5 now, not a major problem. I take on c3 with a hit on his rook, and white has some serious issues. So he played bishop d2, which looks like a blunder. This is clearly a mistake. I guess bishop b2 was the best move. And we're going to win that pawn on a3. He might have some counterplay in the center, but it's a little hard to believe that it's enough to compensate for a whole pawn in an ending. I think for his rating, he's played credibly. Certainly not an easy game for black. Rook e2, rook c, a, b, d1. And probably best for me is to trade on d4 and take on a3. After which he has e4 with some counterplay, but he's going to be a full pawn down. And I have a relatively dangerous queenside majority in the ending. So thanks everybody for joining the stream. We are International Master William Paschall. We are singular. We like to say we. Anyway, check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training, on YouTube. Now, Rook e2. Yeah, I mentioned this move. I take on d4 first because I guess knight takes a3 is also a move, but then he has rook a1. So I want to eliminate the possibility of him taking on c5, jeopardizing my pawn structure. We might have had interesting tactics there, or still have. If cd, knight takes, very interesting. C takes d. Wow. Because his pieces are having trouble coordinating. After cd, knight on c takes e3. But maybe it's not enough. Yeah, it should be enough. It's nasty. I have a perfect pawn structure. cd, knight takes e3. Unbelievable. Knight on c takes e3. And bishop takes c3, knight c3. Threatening a whole rook. And then when I take his whole rook, maybe I have an awful lot of pawns. So that's one way to do this. We're getting low on time. I'm going to do it. At least I have a lot of pawns. But I guess it's going to be like unclear whether I should have done this. More like simply with maybe it was simpler to just win the pawn. But here I get 2 pawns and a rook for 2 pieces when he's got a really dubious structure and difficulty coordinating. In my experience, this kind of position is usually... There I also had rook c3, but I wasn't sure that I have anything after rook d1. Actually, I'm pretty sure I don't. So this is a little optimistic by me, I guess. Realistically, maybe he has some chances here. I don't think he has a lot, but I don't know. This was really the best. But anyway, I mean, in a practical game, black is winning most of the time here. The 2 connected pass pawns are probably winning. With the 2 rooks work pretty well with these pass pawns. The rooks are very easy to coordinate. The minor pieces not so much. So it's unpleasant. It's very unpleasant for white. So I chose this over winning the pawn. I don't know. Knight f4. Rook takes pawn. He may decide to liquidate with d5, which makes some sense because his pawn is a pretty serious disadvantage. So it's really d5. The alternatives are really non-existent. I mean, h4, what's he going to do? He can't move his rook to the c file. King f2, perhaps, then king f2. I think h4 or d5 here. Maybe he's concerned about d5, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, rook e8. I mean, d5, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, rook e8. That's nothing. No, I mean, d5 is the best chance. Maybe he could even sack a piece for the 2 pawns on the queen side. Well, here I have to watch out for my... I have to watch out for my back rank. So I guess h6 is the least weakening of the moves that I could possibly play. It would have been worth considering, well, what I'm going to do next here is I'll tell you, rook a2. Because this will probably force him to trade a set of rooks, when my task is much easier, I think. So, good game by Gabriel, though. I mean, 1600 is... You know, he's outrated by 500 points. And this is a very tough game he's played against me. So, now rook c2. When it looks like he may be close to lost. The knight e4 is not really a stable square for his knight. That's the problem. He needs to defend his rook. He needs to defend his knight. His pieces are getting tied up. He has no back rank threats. My pawn structure is very, very safe. And there's the outside pawns to worry about as well. So rook d8. I think he's lost. He does have one move. Yeah. The rook c8 doesn't really do anything. I don't think it does. Rook d8. Bishop e1 is his only move. When trading rooks, his king is cut off. And I don't think there's really much hope for him to stop my connected pass pawns. Looks extremely difficult. f5 maybe first. I'm not sure. I would like to get my king in the game. Bishop d2. Maybe a6. And now he's trying to cross over. b5. I want to keep the pawns on white. Okay, king now. It's important that there's pawns on the other side of the board here, because without those, obviously it would probably be a draw. And interesting. Okay. Keep improving my king. If knight b4, I was a little concerned. Let's try check. And once again, the key is like the threat of invading on both flanks. So I'm threatening invasion on the other side. Now he's going after the pawn, but I'm going to get at least one of his pawns on the other side. Attack the base of his chain. I'd like to win his whole pawn chain if possible. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that. But we're down to 2 minutes. Got to make it fast. Make it snappy. So knight takes a6, rook g1. But also rook g1, rook h1 also good. I think rook g1 to go after the base of the chain seems kind of fundamental. Our king is in a good central square where it can move to either flank. Knight takes a6, rook g1, knight c7.